car is driving around. Now, what the interesting part, at least for me, and what I want to talk about this, is that the data is starting to become available. So cars from 5 years ago, maybe even 7 years ago on the streets, they are collecting the data. The data is being transmitted to the backend, the servers of the car companies, but it's not being shared. And it is that way because at some point the car makers hasn't really figured out that how can this data be monetized? Can it be securely transmitted? Are they liable if someone uses that data or that access to the vehicle to do something terrible? I've had some examples from these meetings. It was once that if some developer would use the information that the car was coming to your home to turn on your coffee machine, and for some reason the coffee machine would start a fire, then the question for the car maker was more or less that, are we liable that your house burned down because you got the data input from the vehicle? But this is kind of really thoughts that are being thought about in the legal way. And that's also a problem when these things take time. But there's some hope. I mean, there are some developer portals. BMW, they opened up first the kind of data access last year. And Mercedes-Benz, they have a developer portal. General Motors have some things too. But of course, these are, Mercedes-Benz and BMW, they are leading car makers. You can expect that they take some first steps. But if you look at all these car companies, even though if they are starting to think about how can they share that data or want to share that data for new services or for other things, it's not quite clear for them how they should interact with the developer community. Because if you are a developer, you're usually quite spoiled in terms of developer tools. If you work on iOS and Android or other popular platforms with Stripe for payments, or even with IOTA, right? You have good documentation, you have SDKs, it's easy to work with these tools, but none of that really exists for the car industry at the moment. So we are, at High Mobility, we are building a platform to provide these type of tools that make it easy to use to work with car data. So we have been working since basically 5 years ago when we started out with some first proof of concepts. We have always been trying to standardize the data from the vehicles, because each vehicle has different operating systems. They're very difficult, but we have been looking at standardizing the data that comes out of the car, so it doesn't matter if you're accessing data from BMW, from Mercedes-Benz, from Honda, from Toyota, you always get the same type of data. And the second thing we do is that we unify the charging process, because none of this data that are coming from the car companies is for free. You have to pay for it, but at the same time, each car company have their own pricing for it. So this is something that we kind of try to tackle, to have one integration effort to get data from different car makers at one price point where you can know exactly how much this will cost you. But 5 years has been quite a journey. So we didn't see that the data access would come anytime soon. So what we started out with was building a simulation environment, a sandbox environment for how you could see what type of data actually potentially could be extracted from the car and work with that. And here's just a short video I can play. So this is one, let's say, a short video from our developer center or developer platform that you have actually a virtual car that you can work with. Because that's typically the case that if you want to work with data or a car, you don't have a car next to you, so how can you test it? But through this testing environment, you can actually see the location of the vehicle. It's done in Google Control. You can get that data through an Android app, an iOS app, or a web app. And you can also use it to interact with it. So now as you can see, I opened the application. I have some logs going on underneath, and I can see, and I can interact with it. Here I will turn on the lights of the vehicle, let's see. And the lights goes on, so using the data you can actually see the virtual car, how the car behaves, and how we can use those type of things. So this was kind of first that we built the simulation environment, and then we wanted to take it starting to build a developer community. Because this was even before we had access to any car data. We wanted to see, okay, we had to convince the car companies, because the car companies were also said, okay, maybe car data can be monetized, but what type of services would it be? So we didn't work that much with use cases. We wanted to show that there are actual external companies, third-party developers, startups that have great services if they only could get access to car data. So that was, we launched first with Mercedes-Benz and second with Porsche, type of global challenges. So these global challenges were a bit like hackathons, but they were going on for 8 weeks. So for 8 weeks, developers could get access to the car simulators they could see the different data that they could get from the car, they could build the prototypes, they could demonstrate it basically in the same way as this video, and then present it to car companies. So this was a kind of first step in kind of convincing and showing car makers that actually there are good services, there are good companies willing to pay for this data, they can provide totally new experiences to their customers. And one kind of frequent thing we saw was blockchain being used. So we saw several cases where we had car wallets in these hackathons. So there were car wallets used for paying for parking was one case, and some other cases where you had peer-to-peer car sharing, also where this was paid with some cryptocurrency. And we had some cases where the driving behavior was recorded and put onto blockchain in some kind of profile, so you could actually see that, okay, this car has been driven in a certain way for the last years, so when you resell the car, you could actually have some good history on it. So there were a lot of different use cases was built on the blockchain and from these type of competitions. We kind of binds it together with IOTA, but we saw the interest, so we looked at that, okay, we have vehicle APIs, it's all the time being combined with some blockchain technologies, and of course the Tangle is also a good option or an excellent option where you can combine the car data with the Tangle and see what type of things you can build. So it's not really one thing, but it's kind of two great components that you can use as a developer to kind of enhance or build a service on top of. So I wanted to show a bit how that looks like. Let's see. So here's our platform live. So if you go on highmobility.com, you can sign up to our platform today. What we have in our platform is we have these SDKs. If you want to use on Android, if you use an iOS, a Node.js, a REST API, you can download it. How we do with the car APIs, zoom in a bit, is that here we have a different set, basically an open API standard. So all the standardization that we're doing of the car data, it's all in open format. It's available here. We're all the time updating it. So here you can see the type of things that you can get diagnostics data. It's all specified, and you can use the SDKs to work with it. Quite technical right now. But again, to the visual part is that today we have a Porsche workspace. So if you go into our platform, you can see that here we have like previews of cars that have different APIs. So this is being used, so we can see we have the Cayenne. I can launch the emulator. So in the same way as we had in the video, you can see that this is a visual representation of the Porsche Cayenne. And here you can see a bunch of different APIs that you can work with. We have charging APIs, estimated range, battery level. And you can also play certain scenarios. So here if I play like a simulation, and you can see that the map is starting to move, the car is actually driving at the moment. So another way of how you can test these type of things. So you can have real trip data loaded into the simulator, run it, you can see what's going on, and all the time use an API to get that data and work with it and build your service on top of it. And what we then jumped into or working with, we are going to launch it soon, is a workspace for IOTA. So we have a workspace for tools that you can use to work with car data. And we can have a small preview of that in a testing environment that we now have here, the IOTA workspace. So here we have different workspaces. We have the IOTA workspace. And here we can see different information about the Tangle and some latest news and so on. But the main part here is that IOTA team is sharing different blueprints. So blueprints are kind of examples how you can use IOTA or the Tangle together with vehicle APIs. And I think Anne, you can talk a bit about what that is and the first blueprint that we have here.
Sure.